Hoops, we did it again. Celtic win the title again. There's a title party at Parkhead, and the Scottish Cup against Rangers is on the horizon. That's this week on 20 Minute Tims. Melly, Stephen. I thought I'd bring back an old classic.
A now 25-year-old reference to a Britney Spears song.
Aye, Hoops, we did it. Listen, it's better than Champions Again. Which
yeah.
was, one, a bit boring, and two, that was Ange's catchphrase. But listen, that is the bottom of the barrel when it comes to things that we need to talk about, because that title party, Martin Melly, was absolutely exceptional.
What a week it's been since last year, wasn't it? The Kilmarnock game seems like ages ago, but that was brilliant. And then on to Saturday, and it looked like Celtic might not get the victory, and they done it again. At least we lead at the top of the league. A perfect end to a not so perfect season.
Oh, it was superb. What a week it was, because as we sit here, the last time viewers, listeners on the flagship would have heard from us, it was on the cusp of winning the title. We needed 1 point from our remaining 2 games. And much like Celtic promised to do, they sprinted over the line, got both victories. Of course, going to a place like Kilmarnock holds its own, challenges. We've seen that this season. Did Kilmarnock have one final card to play in the destination of the title, or at least delaying it? Because obviously the Celtic have struggled against Kilmarnock massively this season. They would have been full of confidence, and it's just a general professional thing where nobody really wants to be the place that someone clinches the title. Regardless of what you've accused Kilmarnock of being, the wee team of, or the manager, who the manager supports, anything like that. You don't want to be the host of a title party and you just have to skulk off and have everybody celebrate in your stadium. But nothing was to get in Celtic's way that time.
Well, they might not wanted it, but that's what it ended up. If they had a final card to play, it would have been the Joker, because that's exactly how the game panned out.
Yeah.
By the time the celebrations kicked off at Parkhead, though, you guys were on the post-match podcast on Patreon talking about just what the celebrations meant and what the celebrations like, and it is honestly such a brilliant way to cap off absolutely everything this season. It's like you're waiting. The game itself, it felt a bit like a pre-season friendly or something. It had that nature about it. You felt like we were just going through it, even though the players, as Brendan Rodgers said after the game, they had to put in the work to get the reward at the end. But I just love it. I love all the title celebrations. I love the party atmosphere at Celtic Park. I loved all the Joe Hart stuff. I was really fully bought in. It felt like when we were last year, we were saying we can't believe we could win the title between this podcast. But the time the Celtic Park rolls around, like this is what it's all about. The sunshine and Celtic are lifting another title. All the songs are being sung. There's fireworks. There's tifos. There's face painting. There's it's just an absolutely amazing party atmosphere, and it's just I was trying to think about what it's like, Melly, when you go to one of these title parties at Celtic, because it's quite unlike anything else, really. It's because it's not quite like a wedding, because you have different family factions at a wedding who don't really talk, who don't really like each other. It's not like a birthday party. It's just this massive party where 60,000 people are up here, yes, mate, to strangers, and they're all shaking hands, and everyone's bouncing up the road, singing songs and talking about it. A title winning party really is uncomparable to anything else really that you have in your life, and if you're lucky you might get 20 or 30 of them in your whole life to enjoy, but it's when you're there and you're looking about and
20 or 30 in your life, extremely lucky to get that. That's a tiny percentage of football fans across the world, really.
Well, that's what I mean, but I'm just that when you're
Glasgow.
That's what you might get one in your miserable life, might let you in, you don't even get it because it was during COVID. But you're looking about and there's guys you don't know. Wow, yes, mate, shake your hand. I love the podcast. Thanks very much. You're getting all that.
Just some fans telling us what a superb job we're doing as usual. Yeah.
So my point is, that was a joke, by the way. Nobody says that to us. It was just brilliant. I loved every minute of it, and I was so pleased that the players managed to get it across the line. I was so pleased for Joe Hart, and I was fully bought in by Flag Day.
Yeah, I think it's...
No, sorry, not Flag Day. Trophy Day.
Trophy Day. I think it's the first game sort of you've walked into this season where it's not must win. We've had in the Champions League or in the Cups or in the league, it's always been, we really need to win this game, and this was the first game you thought, do you know what? It's not about the win today, it's about the enjoyment after it. And look, no matter how many times it happens, I look forward to it every year. It feels kind of like it happens every year that you can go to the football, but is different. I mean, Stephen, we're talking about, there's always different backstories. There's always somebody's last game. There's always something going on that makes each one different and each one specialty someday different, doesn't it? It's Brendan Rodgers come back, Joe Hart's last title, league winning season. So there's always something going on. And you can never get bored of that. I don't see how it ended. The people that say you get bored of this are the people that never experience it. And Joe Hart was talking about Celtic and how it's something you need to experience, and it's the same with league title wins. You need to experience it to understand it. This is why we go. This was the 38th game. We didn't just turn up to this game and go, we've been given this trophy. You've worked for it for 38 solid games, and this one felt like it was worked for, really, really worked for. Last year under Ange, Celtic had sort of wrapped up a long while ago. It was sort of just, we're going to win this league, it's a matter of time. This one, there was points you think, we might not win this league, and we doubted, we kept the hail as well. And when you turn up, you go, do you know what? Everybody's worked hard here, the fans, the players, the management, the staff, everybody's worked hard, and you get what you deserve at the end of it, and it was a big old trophy.
The thing about it is, Stephen Melly's right, talking about the hard work. We were speaking about how hard Brendan Rodgers and the players must have worked. But it is these massive title parties and all the enjoyment we get, and it sort of lasts all through the summer. That buzz lasts, carries you all through the summer. It's so strange to think about that's not, you don't get that for granted. That's like every player that goes in on training on a Wednesday who can't be asked but pushes themselves through it. That's the reward for that. Every player who thinks the game's lost but keeps trying, that's the reward for it. Every time Brendan Rodgers thinks, these two guys are absolutely crap, I need to find a way to work. I need to spend another 8 hours watching video footage with Gavin Strachan, working on set. All these things that they do every time that they couldn't be asked, but they did it anyway. That's the reward at the end of the season for that. That's what makes it so worth it. It's kind of it's a prize from the players delivered to us. It's all the stuff they've been doing all through the season. Every single time, if you're a Celtic player, every time you went into training, if there was ever a time you couldn't be arsed, but you just dug it out anyway, if there was ever a game that you just couldn't be arsed, or you dragged your teammate doesn't have a good game and you dragged him through it, all of those wee things you did all season, that's the reward for it for us, and it's brilliant.
Or played through injuries, or came back early from injuries, as we've seen players do time and again this season. It all becomes worth it in the end, and the players deserve enormous credit for that, because if we could be accused of getting bored of success, so could the players. I mean, what is another league title win to people who have won multiples of those? Well, the answer is they're never boring, and we get that all the time. It's almost every season now that people say, "Oh, is it not boring just winning that league?" And this is probably the last time I'll ever address this kind of thing, because
it's boring.
Yeah, it's boring. Yeah.
It's boring.
Yes, this by its nature is even more tedious than arguing about it is more tedious certainly than winning leagues. But it comes around all the time, and for all the reasons we've already spoken about already, it'll never become boring, because look, I know, I appreciate that most of football, as I've already said on this podcast, most of football is winning absolutely nothing, and people just go along to see their team and support their team regardless. And I mean that with genuine respect. I'm not
except
being like
Rangers fans.
Yeah, except the Rangers fans. I'm genuinely not being like patronising or sneering about that at all. I know for a fact that most of football just isn't this. It's not winning multiple titles and winning countless trophies and sweeping up trophies left and right for years upon years now. That doesn't happen in football. And actually, I heard a podcast. It was a Man City podcaster appearing on another one. I think it was Totally Football listened to. He popped in and he was talking about their title win. And even they are like, well, I appreciate that most of Europe, most of Britain certainly thinks that it's just boring that Man City win it every single season now. But it's not. It's not for us, because it's about the drama that led us to this point. As you've already said, Millie, sometimes it looks like it's out of your grasp. At various points this season, it looked like Arsenal had it in their hands. After Jurgen Klopp announced his retirement, it looked like Liverpool were going to push through everyone and claim it. But Man City won it again, and it for those reasons, it becomes not boring at all. And that's a story, not exactly, but it's similar to the story of Celtic season. We looked out of it for a time. They're not completely out, but think about this. Celtic threw away an 8-point lead at one point and then won the title by 8 points in the end. It's incredible, and that's why it'll never be boring.
Underestimated how much everyone at one point, and I say everyone apart from Celtic fans mostly, everyone in this league had backed Rangers. That cannot be underestimated or not forgotten. He came in as usual, and he's the next big thing. He came in with 7 points behind Celtic and admittedly clawed it back. But when it's all said and done, he's a big fan of pointing to particular points in the season. As Clement, he's a big fan of saying, well, at X milestone, arbitrary milestone that I've decided we were X ahead, and by half time we were XG was equal, and blah, blah, blah. When it was all after 38 games, you were 8 points behind. Yeah. And when you walked in the door, you were 7 points behind. And it doesn't really matter what happened between then and now. That is the only way we get to judge who the best manager is and who the best team is when the league table reads games, 38 points, however many you've got. Yeah. That is it. And the amount of this whole thing about Brendan Rodgers talking about we write our own story, I thought that was really good. We've spoken about that before, about how much managing Brendan Rodgers had to roll up the sleeves and get in amongst the management of the situation. But there definitely was an element of Rangers thought the momentum was with them. They thought that 3-3 draw had won them the league. Yep. And then at that point, in their run-in, that's when Celtic kicked into gear. That's when, as Brendan Rodgers, Celtic came alive. But Melly, it must be, what do you think it takes for a guy like Callum McGregor or James Forrest, but Callum McGregor especially, who has won it all, to just stay hungry for this? Is it because he's won it all? Because Callum McGregor's come through a winner? He almost doesn't know anything else. Yeah. So he's like, no, wait a minute. It is absolutely unacceptable to me that we don't win this league. So here's how it's going to play out, everyone.
It's a sort of addiction, isn't it, for the players and us as fans? Because we're never going to get to the end of the season, lose a league and go, oh well, we've won the last two, we'll give this one a miss and go on. That's not what it's about. We as fans want to win because that's the trophy you play for at the end of it. And as players as well, what's the point in getting to the end of a season, especially a guy like Callum McGregor, captain of Celtic, where the expectation is win the league or it's been a bad season. You don't get to the end of it and everybody goes, do you know what, mate? It's all right. It's all right. We didn't win it this time. We'll go again next time. It doesn't go like that. Callum McGregor hasn't done that. He's the captain of Celtic. Every time he's been captain of Celtic, every season he's won the league. He wants to keep that up. Every player wants to finish with more trophies, more medals, because these guys are winners. It's again going back to the culture. The culture at Celtic is winning or it's unacceptable. If you don't win the league at Celtic, you're probably out of a job. Whether it's a player or a manager, players will be sold, managers will lose their job. It's what has to happen. And you wouldn't want it any other way, would you? Because what's the point in turning up every season? Celtic, through their history, win titles, get to this one and go, nah, I'm not going to have it this year. Callum McGregor just epitomises that because it's the culture, it's that drive and that hunger just to keep going. These guys, him, James Forrest, that have been there and done it for so long, they know what it takes, and that's what gets you over the line, and that's why it gets difficult when there's nobody like that. Rangers are again falling into a pattern where there are no winners in their team. It's getting further and further away, so they're going to have to build that again. Celtic are full of it, and they've just brought in a raft of new players who aren't good enough, but have still got a league winners medal. They know what it takes, and it's just that drive, that addiction to winning that goes on in the club.
I think it's become apparent that it is the culture of the club, this relentless winning mentality. And again, I say that in full knowledge that that's not the reality of every football club, and that is the reality for us as fans of this particular club, is that we expect winning things, and now even more so than ever because of the last decade or so where Celtic have been completely dominant. And it doesn't seem to have been a coincidence that all these words we say, all these sentences we just sort of throw out there that surround the club, like turn up when it matters or knows what it takes. This is literally Celtic's best winning run of the entire season. Yep. Is the last 8 or 9 games. I think there's only the draw at Ibrox, and then there's the semi-final, which is technically a draw but won in penalties anyway. Won every other game.
Do you remember, Stephen, that we can't win 3 games in a row?
Yeah, I certainly do.
What a wild ride that was.
I certainly do.
Remember we ever talked about, we just need to win this next 6 games, and we're like, we've not done that all season. Yet here we sit, won 6 games, canter.
And it's, again, the idea that this could ever become boring, it's like, again, I will retire this point because until next season we're accused of it being boring again.
Stephen, if the time is for settling scores isn't just after you've won the league title, then when is it?
I'm just waiting for Brendan Rodgers to wheel out his list of grievances as well.
We'd probably be on there.
There must be a few, but it's like I will try my best to stop addressing the accusations of it being boring after this point, because
now we come to the liars.
After a certain point, there's a reason that no one debates with flat earthers, because it's not worth doing. You kind of come down to their level. And you know, having said that, I do quite like the idea that our audience is probably big enough so that at least one person out there just went, oh, here we go, yet more round earth propaganda from these shows. Can't believe it. In the pocket of Big Bill Gates.
I wonder if that was that anti-vax French guy, crackpot, who was very prominent on Twitter. I wonder if he listens.
Saw him again quite recently, having a go at us for some reason or other. Yeah,
he's probably a flat earther.
Oh,
anyway.
Without question. Yeah, but so it'll never get boring because again, this is the reality that Celtic fans live in. It's about these moments, and even at that, why I referenced the Kilmarnock game coming into this is because Celtic had 2 games to get 1 point, but they went out and smashed Kilmarnock with probably the best, most complete performance of the season. We've said that several times recently, so they keep sort of one-upping themselves as we got further into the business end. They went out and smashed Kilmarnock in one of the best performances of the season on a plastic pitch against the bogey team of the season, and it meant that there was zero tension turning up to that game whatsoever. Everyone was coming for the title party if you were lucky enough to be there, and it was about how privileged a position that is to be wanting the last game of the season out the way so that you can basically thank all the players and they can do their lap of honour. There was no helicopter changing direction or anything like that. It was basically a day off, and even at that, they went out and won. They came from behind twice and won with a late winner. It's incredible, and we talk about the winning mentality of the club. There it was, writ large, in the very last game of the season. Didn't need to win at all because we have forgiven teams in the past many times for taking the last couple of games of the season off. Ange's team were hopeless in the last couple of games.
Oh my God, I know.
So Martin O'Neill, I think that one of his first couple of seasons, that's when they started losing. They started hemorrhaging points when the title was already won. Remember, we went to gubbed off Rangers when the title was already won, and we were still annoyed about it. But it was the fact that Celtic just went out and buried these teams when it didn't really need to happen just speaks to the mentality of this season, and it has been building towards this. We've worried about Celtic's ability to put together a winning run for a long time this season because it just wasn't there. It just wasn't there. We spoke about the inability to win 3 games in a row. Got a few won over Christmas, but that included the likes of Bucky Thistle, so the question marks were still there. But as soon as it came to the business end of the season, it was full steam ahead.
Saturday was great fun, but between Wednesday and Saturday, there was just times during the day I go, won the league. Just that way it hadn't properly sank in, because there were times when you genuinely thought we might not do this, or this is going to be really tough, and to go into it with a game to spare and then just go, do you know what, this game's for everybody to go out and enjoy. But there was times when I was just thinking on the Thursday, Friday, like, we won the league, man. And it's times like that where you go, do you know what? That's why it matters, because it's not always a procession to the title for Celtic, is it? There's 38 games, you need to win the majority of them. There's times when, look, this has been the biggest challenge we've had off Rangers in a while. Probably doesn't end up like it in the end, because they absolutely...
I was going to say, that was the challenge Rangers, was the challenge ourselves.
Probably ourselves this season, wasn't it? Because, like, we can go out and beat Rangers, that's not the problem. We're unbeaten against them all season, but for those games you fear them because they're derby games, and I'm more feared them because I don't want the feeling of losing. But with the other games, there was points where we're turning up to Celtic Park like, are we going to win today? And that's unusual for Celtic, because we're going through Motherwell, Kilmarnock, HART'S, all home games, St Johnstone, where we failed to win, and sometimes you're looking at, when's the next win coming for this team, because we're on such runs that we're like, are we going to drop points today? But getting to the end of this, and when Celtic building, and just towards the end of it, you go, this is the Celtic, this is what Brendan Rodgers was talking about, this is why he was so calm. He seen this coming, he knew this was coming, and Celtic just smashed through that end point.
That included the arrival or re-arrival of James Forrest, who we need to talk about it, man. Like, he's been pilloried on this podcast by me. I think you guys have had your opinions on James Forrest. I think every Celtic fan's got their...
Absolutely not.
Every Celtic fan's had their...
Do not check the record bud on this occasion.
Every Celtic fan's had their opinion on James Forrest, but there's no getting away from the fact that he's been brilliant, man. He's been simply brilliant, and it's a point I've made before, and it's a question I asked James after the first name test. It was a question I asked him, but the difficulty must have been keeping himself sharp, focused, ready, because the temptation must be really, really strong, especially not just for a player that was dropped for a couple of games, a player who's been out of the picture for maybe 2 seasons now, just to let things... He knows he's on his way out the club. He's probably away in January. He said that himself. Things were up in there in January. He was probably away in the summer before that. He's probably away to keep himself ready. So if someone picks up the phone and goes, any chance you could jump in, play right wing for Celtic, dust the boots off and help us over this title, like, it's extraordinary what he's managed to do. It really shouldn't be underestimated, because the temptation, no matter how good a professional you are, the temptation to think, well, I'm out here in a couple of weeks and I've not played all season, so I don't need to push myself every single day training so the manager notices me. And he said after the game, and it was on the post-match podcast, if you want to check it, he goes, there was times when games were on and there was him and 3 or 4 other guys just training at Lennoxtown while the games were on. He wasn't involved in squads in any kind of way, and I think he's been absolutely brilliant, and not just the sort of off-field professionalism stuff in the games.
Yeah, he's delivered.
He's been absolutely brilliant. He's delivered, Steve.
Yeah, and it's, even if it's distilled down, if you look back across the season, even if James Forrest's main peak this season boils down to about a month of top form, that's what it took. That's what it took to deliver the title. I don't mean to imply that it was just James Forrest, but once again, he played his bit, and that's all you can really ask of him. He would have become completely forgiven for behind the scenes being a bit kind of, not like moody or anything like that, but this doesn't happen at Celtic. It just doesn't seem to happen. But at other clubs, you would get guys who probably get their agent away working in the background to try and find them a move. It didn't happen with James Forrest. He was ready to be called upon when he was needed, and even if it was through a process of elimination. See, if we've tried Palmer, we've tried Yang, we've tried Dyson's injured again, Abada's away in mid-season. We've had to turn to James Forrest. Have you still got it in you? And he's absolutely answered that.
But it does happen at Celtic. It just doesn't happen with James Forrest.
Well,
other players have fallen into that trap.
Yeah, I think it's just professionalism, isn't it?
And that is.
Exactly. That's what I'm after. I think the professionalism of the guy, because I don't know if it's quite sharpness, because when you get to his age, he knows exactly what he's doing. It's just maybe he can't do it a lot of the time, but he's came in and he's just looked reinvigorated again. And look, I'm glad of it, because I have accused him of hiding over the years. I have said, look, his time's up. When he was dished out that 3-year extension, was that last season or end of the season before?
2 years ago. The Ibrox hide and seek champion.
I'll fully admit that, but he's been sensational recently, and I'm glad of it, because it just gives me that reminder. Look, these guys are human beings. They are out there trying their best. Sometimes it doesn't work out for people, but when he's been called upon, he's came in, done his job, and done more than anybody could have ever expected of him at this time of season. He's been absolutely brilliant. I'm glad of it as well. It's that sort of thing where he could be coming, this could be his last season, and everybody going up, maybe he's got another new deal, but he'll be there next year. And it's like what Brendan Rodgers said recently, is that, look, I said he was the best winger at the club, and this is why he can do things that others can't, but he's just not got the engine anymore. And like, he came in, he's done his job, he's done it brilliantly, and it's again that thing we don't see, is it? The Joe Hart, Callum McGregor, James Forrest, Tony Ralston, Brendan Rodgers has spoken about recently. We don't see what those guys do on the training pitch. We don't see Yang, Palmer, Tilly, or whoever coming in and being told that guy's a Celtic winger. That's the standard you need to get up to. And none of those guys have made it up to that standard. Yet James Forrest in at the end of the season, that's what you need to do, boys. That is where you need to get to, and you're a long way off it. So he raises the bar for other people, and it's that culture again around the club. These guys that have been there and done it, and when called upon, they come in. Because Tony Ralston coming in at the weekend sets up the final goal as well. These guys know what they're doing. So it's all about that experience, and that's the thing we don't see, is it? That experience that managers talking about. It's invaluable.
I think that best winger at the club thing, I was thinking about that the other day, and I thought, I wonder if that was Brendan sort of. He saw it out the corner of his eye. He could see James Forrest training, but he maybe he was only 95% or 90% of the way there. And Brendan thought to himself, you know what? He needs a wee confidence booster, a couple of wee words here and there. He's the best winger I've got. Forrest goes, starts to play with the chest out a wee bit, going, oh, do you know what? Maybe I have got a chance of getting in this
chest
team.
Out, shoulders up.
Aye, well,
head forward.
Yeah, those shoulders, butt out.
When you look at the other wingers, apart from Diaz and Maeda, they've all been struggling for goals recently, and James Forrest, that's not something he really struggles with. Even the goal against Kilmarnock, he's where he should be for a Celtic winger, in that area, putting it in. And him and Dyson both got a goal, and even when IDAH scored, I think Maeda's behind him as well, ready to tap it in. So if he's doing that in training, and the manager's that, right, that's what I want you guys to do, and they repeatedly don't do it, and Forrest doing it in training, I'll just give him a go and he can show you how it's done.
I think, Steve, there's something to be said about just when you're talking about the relentless success of Celtic and the way that we win this league and we're used to seeing it. I think this season's been a good reminder that it's not all easy. It's
No.
just a case of sign for Celtic, put the hoops on, turn up on a Saturday, play the game, score the goals, get the 3 points, then magic, lo and behold, the players have worked their arse off for this, and there's players that we've sat here and we've pilloried all season for their performances. There's players who their entire Celtic career that they've copped it. Greg Taylor's always copped it as a Celtic left back. We've sat here and we've absolutely pounded Liam Scales, but we've said, Melly said, teams that play Liam Scales all season at centre half don't win leagues.
Turns out they do.
Turns out they do, and it's graft and hard work. And there's guys in this team like Ralston's another one. We're like, we're playing Ralston at right back. What's going on? But all of these players have contributed to this, and I think it's probably worth mentioning Liam Scales. He's nobody's favourite Celtic player. He's absolutely nobody's favourite Celtic player, and this has been. He said it was the best season of his life. Says it's been the best year of his life. It's been the best season for him professionally, Liam Scales. I don't want to patronise him by saying he's been absolutely brilliant, because I think everyone that watches Celtic knows that Liam Scales has been an amazing footballer. He just hasn't. But it's not necessarily been amazing football and wonderful skill and amazing brilliance that's won us this league. It's been fucking graft and hard work and digging it out, and for Liam Scales, he sort of epitomises what won this league. Like sticking your head where most people won't put their feet. Do you know what I mean? Running yourself into the ground, tying yourself in knots, chasing balls like a fucking spaniel about that park.
Yeah. I thought it's not been pretty, and he kind of sums a lot of that up. Like he kind of epitomises, and I'm trying not to use patronising language about him as well, but he does epitomise that when the going gets tough kind of mentality that Celtic have displayed in the last few weeks. It was never going to be pretty getting the ball over the win over the line in this title because of what we'd seen prior to this season. But even at that, they played some of the best football of the season when it came to that absolute crunch. But Liam Scales and guys like Tony Ralston, they kind of sum up the culture of the club as we've spoken about before. Because see, during this season, even when we were desperate for players, look at January, when we were desperate for players to come in, Brendan Rodgers and the coaching staff still made decisions that these guys can go. Even though we're desperate, we're crying out for players here.
Well, letting these players go in March.
Yeah, yeah. So like Turnbull and Abada and Moore, Bernabe, they all left after we were crying out for players in January. They left towards the kind of end of that window. But it was guys like that who we could have easily have sold. Guys like Greg Taylor, guys like Liam Scales, guys like Tony Ralston, they could all have been moved on as well, judging by how they're viewed upon by fans. But those guys were deemed to be valuable, and they start when, well, apart from Tony Ralston, who's very much kind of second choice to Alistair Johnston, those other guys have played virtually every game all season, Greg Taylor and Liam Scales and they've proved their value once again. I don't think it's appropriate at this point of the season where you've won the league to look back and just kind of misty-eyed nonsense about and forget everything you learned throughout the course of the season. I think there's improvement to be made at Celtic. I think we've got a lot of problems there, and I think there's a lot of unrealised potential at the club. I think that's abundantly clear for everyone to see. But that takes nothing away from the guys who once again did the job, and even guys like Liam Scales who haven't been there and done that and haven't been over the course of title races has stepped up.
It would be totally dishonest of us to sit here on this podcast after, being really, really hard on Liam Scales for 38 weeks of the season or however long the season's been, and then on week 39 go, he's some player, he's class. It would be ridiculous of us to do that.
Yeah.
But the fact of the matter is, he does deserve an enormous credit for the work rate and effort, and that what I was talking about earlier on about all the wee incremental bits of effort that the players put in throughout the season, all those days in training, all those crap evenings away and away games where they were having bad games but they pulled themselves through, or maybe things were going on. But he was part of that, and there's no getting away. He was part of it. All his endeavours and efforts led to the fun that we were having and the joy that we were having on Saturday, and he's equally as responsible for that as every other player.
Yeah, arguably he's got the hardest job at Celtic, isn't he? Because he's the guy that we're all looking at going, he's the first guy to be replaced, or other teams are looking at him, leave him on the ball and he'll make a mistake. So he's got the hardest job at Celtic, but he stood up to it. And look, I've been critical of him, maybe harsh on him, but at the end of the day, come the end of the season, like we've seen at the weekend, he's easily the second best centre-half at Celtic. Whether that makes him a good player or not, that's up to you for you to decide. But
it's two separate things though, isn't it?
Yeah.
Because that is a problem with Celtic, but it's not his fault. He has just done the job.
And he's come in, and there's been players this season where I've been critical of them because I don't think they were trying as hard as they should be, and those guys weren't involved in the running, whereas guys like Liam Scales, Greg Taylor, Ralston, Alistair Johnston, Joe Hart, James Forrest, they maybe don't have that quality like Kyogo, Matt O'Reilly, Cal McGregor, Carter Vickers, the guys that really help Celtic win games. But that hard-working endeavour pushes these guys and helps them go over the line as well. And look, Liam Scales, even at the weekend, he didn't play, but you can just look and see Celtic were worse without a minute. Him and Carter Vickers are easily the best centre-half pairing. Greg Taylor, when Celtic didn't have him in the team, they didn't look as good. When they didn't have Alistair Johnston in the team, they didn't look as good. Celtic's team over the last 3-4 weeks has looked settled, and that's easily you could pick Celtic's best 11, 12 players and go, that's what you've got to work with. Let's try and supplement this last season, because Celtic's team, half of it works really hard and half of it is quality. We need to get a bit more of the quality in there to help these guys out.
And we've made the point before, Stephen, when we're judging these players, we're only really judging them on other Celtic players we've seen in the recent past.
Yeah,
we're not really saying arbitrarily X is not good enough. We're saying he's not as good as the player that he just replaced. And quite often it's that simple.
Yeah, I think that's an overall problem, isn't it? Because we're only comparing it to even last season, when you can it's demonstrably not as good as last season. What we're left, again, crediting Brendan Rodgers with here is he is dealing with Ange's team, but worse. It's Ange's team that he's put out there because there's no new signings involved. IDAH comes off the bench and does very well. But as far as starting games goes, it's basically just like I think it was the previous season, the Rangers game where we didn't have any new signings of the last like 3 or 4 windows, and so it really is a bit like it's a mentality thing here. It seems to be, because what you've just said, Mel, about the fact that Liam Scales is the most, I don't know, most vulnerable, the most at risk of losing his place in the squad. You could say that quite a lot about
Greg
quite a lot of
Taylor,
people. Greg Taylor literally addressed that to you after the game during that little kind of fan media scrum after the game. He said that throughout his entire time here, a left back's always either needed or about to come in. Somebody, we need to upgrade the left back. He's conscious of that. He knows what people think of him.
Welcomes a challenge with us.
Yeah, and he wasn't being like, it wasn't like being belligerent about it. He was basically just saying, look, that's my reality. That's the reality.
A story of me at Celtic, I think is how he said it.
Yeah, that's right. So that's the reality he lives in. He knows that people are always crying out for a left back, if not to completely overtake him, but to at least challenge. But again, that's like I don't think it's been too patronising, again, to lump him in with Liam Scales, in that he has been trusted this season. And I'm not just using sort of aimless, tedious football speak there. You look at what happened. Bernabe was the only other left back at the club, and he was deemed in January, or just after. In fact, he left after January. He was deemed to be of no value to this title run in whatsoever, and we left Greg Taylor completely exposed as the only senior left back at the club, because Brendan Rodgers was like, well, I'm going to play you in every single game because you have value to this.
And the reason I sort of like Greg Taylor so much is because he is very easily a player that you have seen that we brought in for Kamara, and you see he's grown into the Celtic jersey. Do you know what I mean? When he came in, he was very much no fancied. We can do better than this guy, as we've said, and he said we need a left back. But now you look at him and you go, he's nowhere near as bad as people originally thought when he first came into the side. He's not that. In fact, he's not that player anymore. He's kind of almost one of the leaders in Celtic at the moment. You can see that when he got given the captain's armband for all of a couple of minutes. He's in there with the likes of the McGregors, FORRESTs, Joe Hart. He strikes me as that sort of player. So I was pleased to get a chance to talk to him after the game, and I'm pleased to see how much he's grown into the role at Celtic. I think while we're on this positivity vibe, I think it's worth talking about Adam Idah.
Oh, yeah.
Especially in that Kelly game, he was a man possessed.
I've seen all the R9, the Brazilian Ronaldo memes. It's absolutely
He
superb.
should turn up with a haircut for the cup final. He needs to come with a Ronaldo bonnet for the cup final. He really does.
One of the classics, one of the classic haircuts.
The football boots around the neck.
Yeah,
Or maybe not maybe it's too late to grow the bonnet, but he needs to at least turn up with the football boots around the neck, Ronaldo style.
Those old kind of shiny Nike
I
efforts.
think they were called R9s, were they not?
Oh, yeah.
The
I think,
silver and blue ones.
Custom efforts. It's an iconic image.
He gets his custom Celtic boots, doesn't he?
Oh,
he does. There you go.
Yeah.
IDAH, cup final day, boots tied around the neck, Ronaldo style.
I hope that it's not been so long that the Ronaldo haircut is a bit of a kind of esoteric reference now, but he could do it no bother. All he needs to do is shave the rest of it.
Is that hiding to nothing, turning up imitating R9 Ronaldo before a cup final? Maybe
You might not start.
yeah,
big statement, isn't it? But to replicate him.
Good thing nobody listens to us rubbish ideas.
I was outstanding against Kilmarnock, absolutely superb. Everything he did was excellent, and I came away from it thinking he's just a very good all-round footballer now. And again, of course, the debate turns to whether we can make this deal, the deal, or whether you would even want to, whether he wants to. To me, it looks like he'd walk to Celtic Park, even though he already lives in Glasgow. But you know what I mean. But again, the debate is over for me. I think you absolutely sign Adam Idah. If there's a deal there to be done, absolutely do it. I get that people think it's far too much money to spend on someone who isn't necessarily guaranteed to start every game. But I don't.
That's not how football works.
Yes, I don't agree with that at all. Because if he is the guy you want for that slot in the squad, why wouldn't you do it? Because it doesn't matter if you've paid that amount of money and he doesn't start. If he's the guy that you need to supplement Kyogo or another that comes in, then that's what you pay to get that guy. Because the alternative is we sign a guy who has never played for Celtic, who has never proven himself for Celtic, who has never played like that for Celtic, on the basis that we've paid much, much less for that guy. And he might do it. And how many times have we done that over the years?
And two things on that, Stephen. One, we've seen what happens when you buy cheap.
Yeah.
And two, what is this obsession with the guy who's second pick having to be crap? Like, it's, you can't have two Kyogos. Why not? Lots and lots of football clubs in the world have got two brilliant players for each position, and you've got lots and lots of games, especially with all this Champions League football, as he bites himself in the lip. You've got all this Champions League football coming up. There'll be plenty of minutes to go around. And if Adam Idah's happy to do it, and we've got the money to buy him, and we say Kyogo's going to start most games, but you're going to play plenty of football, and he wants to do it, I don't see this obsession that some people out on the internet have with your next in line has to be rubbish. No.
Or cheap.
Or cheap.
It doesn't even have to be that your number one has to be more expensive than your number two. It doesn't matter.
No. Two great strikers, please, Celtic, and I'll take Kyogo and I'll take Idah to go.
Oh, I thought he was absolutely tremendous. I like that. He was tremendous on Wednesday night, and over the last couple of games he's came on as a sub and he's not really done it, but I think that was his first starting 8, so maybe a bit of rust there, but he was absolutely tremendous. From the first whistle, I just thought he went, I'm winning this game, even if I have to do it myself. And it gave Celtic a chance to play a bit differently. There's no doubt in my mind that Celtic playing Adam Idah away at Kilmarnock meant that Celtic could play a wee bit differently.
Yeah.
Celtic players, whether it be defenders or midfielders, were able to play balls down the channel and know he would give their defence a torrid time. They must have been knackered after that game because he ran them ragged. Even that first run for the first goal was absolutely brilliant. And I've just signed him, Celtic, because I think he said at the end of the game on Saturday, look, you don't get this anywhere else, so he knows what it's like, and I think he's loved it, the passion in him when he scored that first goal the other night, but also just the way, like, some games it'll be better for Celtic to start Adam Idah, and some games it'll be better for Celtic to play Kyogo. It might look at next season, do you know what, it's going to be a bit better playing Idah away from home and Kyogo's the man at home. Kyogo's not been at his best away from home. That's fine, play Adam Idah. Something different. Celtic were at their best under Ange with Giakoumakis and Kyogo. And I think as well, we've had a year of coming to at Celtic before Adam Idah came in. Has never, ever came close to having a match like Adam Idah had against Kilmarnock. Absolutely terrorised that defence. Get him signed and get the deal done, man.
Stephen, I think we need to talk about the manager. And I think he's been the centre of attention. Brendan Rodgers since he returned to Glasgow. I think it's fair to say he was sort of met with a bit of suspicion, and you could tell he's not been too happy with the way things have gone. I think I was surprised to see that he was surprised, to be honest, because I think it kind of goes without saying that if you're sweeping up everything, if you breeze into Glasgow, the ex-Liverpool manager, if you breeze into Glasgow scooping up every single trophy, you're basically Tom Cruise as the Celtic manager.
Yeah.
The majority of the press and the people are going to be fawning over you and over every word you say, but you know, you go away and you come back a wee bit, things are definitely going to change. So I'm surprised that maybe Brendan was surprised at how things had changed a wee bit while he'd been gone, and it wasn't just the same as it was before. But that being said, I think there was suspicion, fans were a bit wary about Brendan. Things weren't going right. People questioned him, which is, you know, you're well entitled to do if you're a Celtic fan, and things look as if they're starting to go south. You're well entitled to question the manager. Yeah. But I think, for me, I think it's time now for how do I best describe articulate what I'm trying to say? Is like, it's kind of like that season for that was a trial period for Brendan in a way. Do you know what I mean? In a weird way, that's it, a clean slate. I think as fans, it would be good. I'm only speaking for myself, but other people, to have a wee bit more trust in him. Realise that, okay, as soon as things start to wobble a wee bit, we don't immediately go, is this the guy for the job? Because maybe one day he won't be, but I think he showed us there that he can guide us through the wobbles. I think he's got proper managerial ability. If that wasn't Brendan Rodgers, if that was any other man, if that was a first time guy that we'd never heard of before that dug us out of that mess, the mess that admittedly he got us into, but if he'd managed to dig us out, you think, this guy's got a bit of managerial something about him, and I think
man of substance.
I think he is a man of substance, to coin a phrase there, or to borrow a phrase about Philip Clement. I think he did show that he is a class above the likes of Clement. He is in that upper echelon of manager again, and I'm not just blowing smoke. It was a hard title to win. We've all discussed it. We've always spoken about it. But he dug us out of that, didn't he? And I think he deserves enormous credit.
Yeah.
I think a lot of that's been missed in all the hype. I think, you know, there's still an element of that. I was listening to like Sports Sound and all that. There's still an element of Rangers blew it, Celtic didn't win it type stuff, but I don't buy that for a minute. Did we win, 9 out of our last 10 games?
Yeah.
People call it the run-in. I call it 1/4 of a full football season. We won the majority of the games. I think we won all our post-match split matches for the
5 out of 5.
First time ever. It's
the first time. Celtic, I think, are the only club to have done it, but they have done it before. Yeah.
Oh, right. Celtic are the only club to have. There was some sort of stat bouncing about there along those lines. But the point I'm making is, look, he's managed the absolute bloody hell out of this season. Because Stephen gave me the finger wag. I've sworn twice already. He's managed the ruddy bloody hell out of this football team, and he's got us over the line. Yeah, okay.
He's managed real hard this season, hasn't he? He's managed his very hardest.
Y'all must have forgot.
It's a big y'all must have forgot, isn't it? I think I'm not going to speak for, or indeed really to, anyone about what to do with Brendan Rodgers having come back, because I did see there was a few people who took his speech in at the title party and just stood there and refused to clap.
Yeah.
Right. Hey. Come on. But fine. Again, not going to tell anyone what to do, but I would urge anyone to reconsider that stance, and that season that everyone has been at pains to admit was difficult, right, to win. Callum McGregor spoke about it, Matt O'Reilly spoke about it, Brendan Rodgers spoke about it. It was a difficult season. They've won the league again.
Yep.
So
all that matters.
So I personally speaking, I'm just looking forward now. I'm looking forward. I want to be excited about what's next to come, because unfortunately about this season, the biggest letdown about this season was that the promises that we all built up in our heads going in were not delivered.
Yes.
And what I'm talking about is Brendan Rodgers comes back, he's not going to tolerate any of this nonsense again, is he? They say that he's obviously been made promises about recruitment that are going to be kept. It didn't happen, and that to me is probably the biggest letdown. And that's what I spoke about, or that's what I referred to earlier when I mentioned, you know, kind of untapped potential at this club. I think we've got a lot of room to get better. But how we approach next season is we have to choose to believe that it will be right that this time. We're making changes behind the scenes. Hopefully that's for the better. We need serious surgery in terms of squad management, and I think Brendan Rodgers has earned the right for everyone to, I think, agree that he is the guy to do it, regardless of your personal feelings towards him, because that's two different things, isn't it? You can have personal feelings that are not so great about Brendan Rodgers, about his personality and about his kind of the stuff he was talking about the last time before leaving. Again, that's fine if that's what you want to carry around forever. But professionally, we all kind of need to admit that he's done a very, very good job this season, don't we? Can we all agree on that and just try and be excited about the future now?
He's still got a Scottish Cup to win.
Yeah,
and, you know, I think league-wise he's done very well. And the recruitment thing, I've got one eye on that situation.
Yeah.
I think there's future pods where we'll obviously be discussing it, but I'm pretty nervous about that. But I think in terms of the league, guys worked his back off. You can tell it's not been plain sailing, and some of the players that we've signed, we've spoken to death about it. They got nowhere near. I mean, we signed loads of players that get nowhere near the Celtic team now. How much Brendan Rodgers has to do with that, I'm not entirely sure. He may have a lot to do with it, he may have a little to do with it. The suspicion is he didn't have very much to do with it, and things are going to change next year. But one thing that I really want to change next year, if we win the league, and one thing I was disappointed to see happen was that Champions League music when you win the title part, the title party. I want it done because that I'm being flippant here, kinda, right? Melly's looking at me as if I'm making some sort of deadly serious point, but I'm being slightly flippant. We've been that I was like, we've been doing this road before, because last year what happened was we got the Champions League music, we got the Brendan Rodgers, we got the 3-match package, we got the draw we wanted, we got we're going to sign all these great players and really attack the Champions League. And what happened was we turned up just to participate. Underprepared. The club used the Champions League as a marketing thing for the fans. They didn't use it in any way as a proper benchmark to judge how good the team was, and it was a bauble. It was a marketing bauble, the Champions League music, and I was disappointed to hear it, because up until now that is not a competition that we take in any way seriously. We have no desires to do anything proper in that. So that's my one moan out of the way about the Champions League music. I was disappointed, and it didn't get the massive roar that it did last year. It did not get that massive roar.
And that's the thing was that I was going to say before you brought it up, was all the time that we win the league, my thoughts, or we haven't spoke about it tonight, has been, yes, we're in the Champions League next year. You win the league because you want to win the league, because that's what you compete to get all season. And look, the Champions League is a bonus attached to that. But the club cannot allow us getting into the Champions League and it becoming we are going to get pasted again. We've got 8 games in the Champions League. Celtic struggled this season with injuries, with players out of form, and bringing on substandard players a lot of the time. We'll probably do a podcast on our fallen soldiers or good night sweet princes that have left this season, but some of the names that have featured this season, it's just guys really not up to it. You can't afford that. Celtic are going to have 8 games in the Champions League next season, going up against top teams. I think there's 32 or 36 teams. We do not want to be finishing bottom of that group. So Celtic need to go out there and deliver what the players deserve and what the managers deserve. We've got enough.
What the fans deserve.
Yeah, the players, managers, fans. We've all done our bit this season. Right, let's get some help for next season, because going into that Champions League, you don't want to be dreading games, do you? And that's what we had to end up doing this season. Just had to get through that, and lo and behold, once we finished that, our form picked up. So Celtic have done the hard bit to get themselves in there. The board and the transfer team, whoever that is, need to go and do the hard work, because this team have got the grit, the determination. They've got some quality. We're going to be losing the 2 guys that were our player of the years, Joe Hart and Matt O'Reilly. They're pretty much gone, definitely. Celtic need to replace that leadership. They need to find 18 goals and 18 assists from midfield somehow. And that's before you even improve the rest of the team. So Celtic have got a big job in their hands this season. This league title has been brilliant. It's been sweet, but we cannot afford. Celtic are often accused of not signing from a position of strength. We're in a position of weakness right now. Yes, we've got over the line, but we are nowhere near that potential Celtic can be. Not our words, world class in everything we do. Champions League team, go out and show us you are then.
Merely mentioned them. Might as well mention them. Have to mention them. And Neil had a tear in my eye when they were singing Joe, Super Joe Hart. There's a syllable missing there.
Yeah.
So, but it's okay because he's gone now. We don't need to address it.
We needed a song, but it wasn't a great song, but it was the only one we had.
Well,
really.
I was thinking about Matt O'Reilly. He didn't really have a song, did he? And just in the last, it was only in the Kilmarnock game I thought of Matt O'Reilly, party all the time, party, which would have been great, but we can't use it now because he's probably gone. So we'll need to find someone else. We could Lewis Palmer, party all the time. Nah, that won't work. Anyway, Joe Hart, Stephen, would have brought a tear to a glass eye.
Yeah, what a day.
No offence if you got a glass eye out there.
Yeah, I wondered how they were going to handle it. Clearly, it was his last home game at Celtic, and it's been 3 years of 3 straight title wins for a guy who was written off basically on day one. And throughout, he wasn't suited to this. He couldn't do that. He couldn't dive to this position. He couldn't all those things. Right. What a reception it was. I don't think I've really seen anything quite like it. Now, of course, I make allowances for the likes of Henrik Larsson having left, but in terms of like a guy who came to the club as a bit of an underdog and played the entire time and delivered 3 straight title wins, to get that kind of reception in your last game is virtually unheard of. And the tifos being made and the relentless chanting of his name. And I wondered how they were going to handle it, because I thought to myself, it might be quite nice to take him off before the end, but that because it's a goalkeeper, it almost feels like it's too much of a step. Is it? Yeah, it's a wee bit forced. Is it a wee bit too much kind of forced sentimentality? So when he got the armband when Callum McGregor went off, I thought, right, that's nice. The big hug, big cheer, again singing his name. And then eventually, I kind of thought, right, that's enough. That's enough. He's got
the winning goal made a big part, played a big part.
It was right after that, wasn't it? So Palmer scored and Joe Hart went right off. But I'd kind of made up my mind, that's maybe a wee bit too sentimental. We'll give him the armband and that's fine. And then when he gets subbed off, I'm like, can't believe this. Cry. Yes. But genuinely though, I wasn't crying, but it was a very emotional moment. As far as like moments in football, and it's a happy moment, it was an extremely emotional moment for the entire stadium. And like, as I kind of joked about there, a lot of people said, like, could you get, I don't disagree, but could you get a better goalkeeper in terms of their stats and all that? But if he is not suited to Ange Ball, if he's not suited to what Brendan Rodgers does, then what I saw in that stadium on Saturday, he's done some job of convincing tens and thousands of people that how valuable he's been to this club, because it wasn't just some joke figure. It wasn't like somebody getting taken off and he's been a bit of a cult figure. He was applauded off that pitch. And then when he came out at half-time as well for the second half, and when that tifo was there and he was fighting back tears, he was treated like an absolute hero. After the game, Brendan Rodgers and I think Greg Taylor, maybe even Callum McGregor as well, all referred to him as a legend, and not that kind of just patty way. Oh, he's a legend, that guy. They were talking about him in terms of him being a club legend, and we've spoken many times.
He's a football legend.
Yeah, yes, and we've spoken many times about what that actually means, and I think no one person gets to decide what is or isn't a legend. You kind of, history will dictate that, really. But the fact that they were all at pains to say that, to refer to him as a legend, he has proven his worth to this club many, many times, and that reception was absolutely incredible. As I say, if he really was just some sort of spoofer up here for one final payday, he's done some job of convincing everybody.
Honestly, see these stats, the stats community, they just don't. This to me is that's just there's a whole side of football that they just don't seem to get, and Joe Hart just holds up a magnifying glass to it, right? Because we could maybe get a better goalkeeper on the pitch, right? Well, maybe. Maybe's the answer to it. Maybe's the answer, because we out and spent £5.5 million on a really good European Champions League level goalkeeper, and he was nowhere near as good as Joe Hart. No. I don't care what you say, the guy was nowhere near as good as Joe Hart. But everything else that Joe Hart brings, that these people just don't, not these people, but a lot of people just don't recognise in terms of leadership, right? Oh, that's a mythical quality, this leadership stuff. I'd rather a guy that kept the ball out the net more. Well, Joe Hart keeps the ball out the net. He stops crosses, and we augment the game, and he was passing just absolutely fine.
Inspires others to be better.
Correct. Every single Celtic player and the manager spoke about how important it was to have a leader like Joe Hart there. And the running, if you're just sitting there going, well, this doesn't matter, that side of it doesn't matter. Well, the guys who play the game and the guys who live the game, the professionals in the game, that are telling you it does, and they're telling you it's crucial. Yeah. And as fans as well, we just want people to come to Celtic, right, and appreciate what the club is. And Joe Hart did that. Yeah. He did that. That's all he came. And Joe Hart we wanted to be accepted by Joe Hart for the club that we think we are. And Joe Hart came up here and just wanted to be accepted. And he is about as honest a pro as I've ever seen turn up at Celtic. Honestly, he turned up and he went, do you know what? I'm a bit of an old dog. I'm going to go here. You show me a bit of faith and I will try my absolute best. And without being calling, you simply can't ask any more than that for a player. You can't say, come up here, don't judge us, Joe. We'll no judge you. You try your heart out, and that's the rewards for it. And that is the message to every player that comes to Celtic. If you just give us an honest day's work, that's what you get in return. And it was honestly beautiful seeing that for Joe Hart, because it wasn't so much a celebration of Joe Hart's the player.
No.
It was on
The
that
man.
day. It was Joe Hart the man that got all those plaudits, that got the tifo, that got the song, that got the chants, that got the night at Parky. It was Joe Hart the man that got that. It wasn't Joe Hart came up here and thought, "Wow, we've got Aguero in the last 3 years of his career, and he absolutely ran riot." And he's no. We got Joe Hart, who was a solid goalkeeper for us, pulled off some amazing saves in the run in. Fell in love with the club. Everybody at the clubs loves him. It's Joe Hart the man, and this is your rewards for being such a good guy.
Yeah, and it's such a rare thing, isn't it? I think I was trying to think about it. Is it maybe me, our perception of Joe Hart coming up was the decent, coming up like a guy that's not played football in a while, coming from former England international. You're just thinking, is he coming for the payday? And I didn't know too much about Joe Hart the man before this, but as soon as he came here talking about going to repay the faith, like, right, I'll give this a go. And then when you hear him, and it's that when he's coming to the end of his career, it's that thing again you cannot buy. He's announced he's going to retire. Celtic have got a lot of young players, and guys like him, James Forrest, they're looking at them going, it's nearly over for them. I need to savour every moment of this career. Joe Hart's going to have a longer career than probably every outfield player on that pitch, and he'll be saying to guys, this will be over before you know it, so enjoy it and embrace it. Joe Hart's been at Man City, he's played at the highest level, World Cups, Champions League, European Championships, English Premier League, and he's came up here and said, this has been an unbelievable experience. This has been the best thing. Rightly said, Jamie, as soon as guys come in, all we're asking for them is to be good players and probably more so represent the club the way we feel it deserves to be. And Joe Hart has surpassed all of that. He's been absolutely incredible. Every time he speaks about Celtic, in fact, I don't think I've ever heard of somebody coming in that doesn't support Celtic or doesn't have any affiliation to Celtic coming in and speaking about the club, the fans, the stadium, everything like Joe Hart done. He's just been brilliant. I can't think of another player that's come in and just taken to it less. Lubo Moravcik maybe, kind of Lubo-esque, but even then, Joe Hart's just, it's been totally different. The redemption arc on his career has been brilliant. And again, like we said a couple of months ago or a few weeks ago, just win it for him. And I think that's what really pushed this team.
I suppose my message to other Celtic players would be, having watched the Joe Hart thing, because
That's the standard.
Well, James Forrest nearly walked out the club in the summer and he had a testimonial, and if he left then he wouldn't have got anywhere near what Joe Hart got. But I think there's a commonality between Joe Hart and Ange Postecoglou, the two people that made such a big impression short period of time. And it was, they came up here and they weren't media trained within an inch of their life. They showed us a bit of who they are.
Yeah,
you know what I mean? And I think that's maybe what it's sort of holding back a wee. Now they don't have to, because sometimes that's the type of person, and sometimes it's not the type of person you are. But we don't know an awful lot about the type of person Callum McGregor is, or James Forrest is, or Greg Taylor is, or Anthony. All these guys, and because every time we see them, every time they're in front of a camera, they're very reserved. They're very quiet. You don't see beyond that media trained facade that's right there.
Personality, isn't it? That's been the thing with Joe Hart. He's came in, and I think it's with him, Ange, other guys like that. It's, you get to see their personality, but at the end of it, it's because they love football and they've managed to come here and they appreciate what they've got, and they go, do you know what? This might be the biggest club I play for. This might be the biggest thing I do in my career, and they just appreciate it. And they always talk about the fans and this atmosphere and all that, and it's just that appreciation and their personalities that shine through.
And and that would probably be. I remember saying something earlier on in the season about Brendan Rodgers. Like, just shows a bit of yourself here, and he did. He said during midweek, he goes, I'm not made of wood, and I thought, exactly. That's what people find it very difficult to connect with a media trained drone that sits there and bats away questions. What we connect with is people who wear their heart in their sleeves and are honest about how they feel, and they show a bit of passion and
vulnerability
and that's really, there's no secret sauce.
No.
That's all it is. That is Ange and Joe Hart on one side, that honesty, that vulnerability, that personality, and the other guys who deserve equal plaudits. We just don't see an awful lot of that from them, and and I know it's not in them, and I know some of them are like James Forrest is just a naturally quiet guy that doesn't have social media as we keep making a parody of, and is a very quiet, and there's loads of players like that. But I would just say to them, like, if they're looking at what Joe Hart got and going, how did he get announced that? It's just, don't necessarily, I'm saying go chase it, but I think that's the difference, isn't it? It's that vulnerability, as you said.
Quite funny if James Forrest has had 1,000 burner accounts on Twitter this entire time, and every
leaving us comments,
every bit of abuse we've ever had has been a various James Forrest account on there. No, he's never been on social media. But look, a final thing about Joe Hart as well. We've spoken about the personality side, but even professionally, look, he's done a very, very good job.
Yeah.
And how often do players announce their retirement and have people wondering why are you retiring just now? Have you not got another year in you? You look as if you could play another year, 2 years. And people say that a lot, but on this occasion, people genuinely mean it. I've seen discussions from various pundits between them saying,
I mean it. I was surprised.
like people are saying he's easily got another year in him, and I really don't want to see him go. How often does that happen? How often is the complete opposite of that, where we're starting to look at players who are getting up there in age and thinking,
David Marshall throwing the ball in the net every single week.
But even the likes of, see, your bona fide legends are great, so whatever you want to put on it, like Scott Brown, Mikael Lustig, guys who stayed a bit too long probably, and they started to creak towards the end. But I think Joe Hart is going out at exactly the right time.
Yeah.
I don't want to. I personally don't feel the need to see him. The inevitable crumble, the inevitable humiliation where he gradually gets worse and worse. Like, to go out on a high like this is something that players very rarely get to do. And he has spoken about the fact that he is moving back down south for family reasons as well. It's not really about physically struggling to cope with it anymore. He just made up his mind for personal reasons. He wants to move back to England. So I think his mind is completely made up. But it's just been interesting for me to see how many people legitimately and sincerely want him to keep on playing.
I mean, just don't want to linger too long on the Joe Hart thing, but I think there must have been conversations in his house where his family are like, he's like, I'm going to go to Scotland for just one last shot at it, and his family must have been like, right, okay, right, we support you, we'll go. And he's like, got his kids down here, and he's got his family down there, but he's living up here, and he's like. And it's all worked out for him. And it's all worked out wonderfully for him. And he's like, do you know what? I asked Celtic to give me a chance. I perhaps asked my wife, or maybe he didn't need to, but they were beside him all the day. I asked my family, I'm going to try this one more time. If it doesn't work now, then God knows where I end up. And it's worked out beautifully. And as Melly's so fond of saying, you don't always get to ride off successfully into the sunset as Celtic. We've got a cup final coming up.
Yep.
But we kind of have run out of time in the podcast.
To
discuss
probably.
it. We are going to look forward to it on our sold out live show 3 years in a row, so thank you so much to everyone who bought tickets for that. We will see you on Friday at the Barras Art and Design Centre the night before the cup final. We'll spend some time looking forward to the cup final. Then I suppose we better extend congratulations to the women's team who won the league with the last kick in the ball, Tom Rodgers style. I thought that was absolutely brilliant. Oh my God, I've not mispronounced that name in such a long time. Listen, thank you so much to everyone who's been following us this season. We're going to keep doing podcasts, a couple of flagships left, and of course, patreon.com/20minutetims. The podcasts, videos and writing never stop over there. Support us over there as we move into our 10th season covering Celtic. Thank you so much for watching and listening.